Let's sew some gloves together. They are a super easy project even for beginners, and it's a perfect gift you can make from some scraps you have. To get started, you always need double layer fabric. I always have the nice side of the fabric inside and here as well. Just check that the thread running is straight, and then you can basically cut it out. Always just pin really well, and also cut it once from some other fabric. Again, here double layered. When you have all the pieces, you can take one of these and one of these and match up them. The same thing for this piece. Always check that you have the opposite and the nice side of the fabric facing inwards. So I'm just pinning. When you've done that, you can do the same thing for your second fabric. Here as well, just check that you have the opposite with the thumb. Consider your seam allowance of about foot wide, which is 7 millimeter, and just go straight across and mark. Here as well, this is the height of the fabric here, but going 7 millimeters down is considering your seam allowance, so you have the place to stop. For the last piece as well, just using my Geo triangle, 7 millimeter along the edge, and I'll just mark. Now I'm starting where I have marked, and at the start and at the end I do a few back and forth stitches. I just go foot wide, which is about 7 millimeter seam allowance. Stitch length 2.5. Here I'm going slightly further down, about 7 millimeter. Turning so that I can start foot wide along the edge here. Doing a few back stitches again. This I'm doing for all 4 of them. Cutting back all loose threads, and at the top here I'll also just along the rounded part I'm cutting back the seam allowance slightly like this. In the corner here I make a little cut, but not too close to the edge, just like that. Again for all pieces, like this, and cut back along the rounded part here for all. And always here check that you're not going too close to the edge, because you don't want it to open up. Back at the sewing machine, I'm now for all of them doing a zigzag stitch across the edge, just until here where I have started, so that it won't frame. Should look something like this, and this I'm doing for all of them. At the ironing board, I'm now ironing for the outer fabric this part of the seam allowance upwards towards the rounded part, and for my inner fabric I'm ironing this part of the seam allowance down. Always turning it around and quickly giving it a press from the other side as well, checking that it's nice and flat, and for the other two of course as well. Taking the other piece of fabric I have prepared, I can now for all 4 pieces pin this together. Here it's important that the nice side of both fabrics is inside facing each other. For all 4 pieces again, and here I'm just pinning the whole thing all around. Of course, the same thing for the other 2 pieces as well. Now I'm sewing all around what I have just pinned, and again with 7mm seam allowance, which is just along the edge of your sewing machine foot if you have the classic home sewing machine foot. And here I'll just be careful to check that the seam allowance lies as I want it when I'm at this point. And then I'll just stop exactly at the thumb here. At the start and at the end, I'll do a few back and forth stitches. Coming to the thumb, I just stop precisely where I have started, like this, and then I'll just fold it up and I start exactly where I have stopped on this side here, doing a few back and forth stitches again. This I'm doing for all 4 of them. For all 4 of them, I'm now again just along the rounded part at the top, cutting back the seam allowance a tiny little bit, like this. Just make sure you still have some, so it will not open up. Choosing a zigzag stitch again, I just go across the edge for all 4 of them all around. Taking all 4 pieces, you can cut back all the loose threads, and when you have done that, you can take one of the outer fabric and one of the inner fabric and match it up with the thumbs facing each other. Taking the lining, I'm turning it inside out like this, pushing out the thumb, and then I just push it into the other one like this. At the seam down here for the outer fabric, I am pushing the seam allowance forward, and the inner fabric I'm pushing the seam allowance backwards to the opposite. I'll just match up the seam and pin it. Here on the other side as well, I'm pushing the seam allowance from the outer fabric upwards, not where the thumb is, and from the inner fabric I'm pushing it downwards, and I'll just match up the seam and I also put in a pin. Then I'll just pin all around like this. At the bottom here, where the thumb is, I'll just leave this part open so that I can turn the glove then. The same thing I'll do for the other one. Taking one, I check where the thumb is and I'll just start here and I do a few back and forth stitches, and then I'll go all around, always checking that the seam allowance lies where I decided that I wanted just before. So for the outer fabric away from the thumb and the inner fabric up towards the thumb. This I do for both of them. Important to leave the opening. I do now a zigzag stitch across the edge, but I just start here and stop here again. With the opening I have left, I can now turn it around. Now I just quickly give it a little press, but especially on the outer fabric. This you can do for both of them. And then you can push the other fabric in. I am now massaging the edge out here, and I just quickly give it a little press. And for the opening, I just pin it close like this. Starting here, I'm sewing all around. I'm just following the edge of the piece, and I just stop a little bit further than I have started so that it won't open up again. And just like that, you're done.